Welcome to Black Man Lab. We are live with lab results this Monday, October 6th. Wow, the year is flying by. I am your host, Marty Monaghan. I am the vice chairman for the Black Man Lab. We have a great conversation tonight that stems from our meeting on this past Monday. We'll get into that in a little bit, but before we get to that, just want to give you some background on the Black Man Lab. Started 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, by four fathers that were just looking to get some different male voices for their sons rather than their own, because we know as fathers, quite often our sons can tune us out. So we looked for an uncle, a godfather, a good friend, somebody that we could trust to share information with our sons. And that grew from just four fathers with their sons to getting to the point where we had over 250 Black men in the room every week sharing information. We have different topics every week, and we share information amongst ourselves, and we call it a safe and sacred space for Black men, something that you don't see anywhere else in the United States, where we're able to get together on a weekly basis and share information and just show one another love and help us to move forward. So with that, we meet every Monday, but we also, during the pandemic, we figured out that because we couldn't meet, that we started doing this virtual thing too. And so that's what Lab Results is. Lab Results is a byproduct of us having to meet virtually, and we did not want to stop doing that because a number of people reached out to us from, different places from around the country that wanted to still hear what we were doing with Black Man Lab. So here we are with Lab Results. One of the things that we do every week also is that we make sure that we acknowledge those that came before us, our ancestors, those shoulders in which we stand on, those folks that will be proud of this work that we're doing. So what we do here on Lab Results is that we just put a fist in the air and we call one ancestor's name every week, and that's going to be the person that carries us through this work we're doing. So I'm going to ask both my guests that are on tonight with me to put a fist in the air and then just call an ancestor, any ancestor you all want, to make sure that they are in this space with us. So on the count of three, we're going to call an ancestor. 1, 2, 3. Sylvester Williams.
Urban Favors Jr.
Ashe, and we say Ashe as an affirmation of whatever we're talking about. So today we're talking about bringing the ancestors in space. So Ashe. With that, I want to give an introduction for our guest tonight. What we were talking about this past Monday and what we're going to talk a bit about tonight is technology and entrepreneurism in that space, right? How to be an entrepreneur in the technology space. And we had two great people on tonight. Both were on our panel on Monday. One of which, and I'm going to start with you, Mark, one of which is a staunch member of Black Man Lab. He's intricate in making this work that we do here on a weekly basis happen. He's the producer behind the scenes generally, but we got him in front of the camera today, so I'm excited about that. My brother, Mark Lawson. Mark?
Hey, hello. My name is Mark Lawson. I'm a technology consultant. My background in software development and development management. Most of what I do involves trying to help companies build applications. I've started to push in the direction of helping them build throughout their journey. So we'll talk more about what that means, and I'm happy to be here.
Man, glad to have you on tonight, Mark, and not just behind the scenes like you normally are, brother. Also, we have a brother, Shawn Johnson, on. Shawn was a great panelist that we had this past Monday, and I thought about it and I said, hey, I want you to come on to talk a little deeper about what you do on Lab Results. So, brother Shawn.
Hey guys, Shawn Johnson here. I'm the founding member of Mobile App Hero, and we're a technology consultant company, and we help our clients tell their stories using technology. Really love helping clients build products, but I also love helping our community get their foothold in technology jobs. And I kind of use my company as a platform to do so.
Great stuff. And we're going to delve deeper into that as well, because you had some gems that you were dropping on Monday that I want us to be able to share virtually as well. With that, let's get started into the conversation. First off, Shawn, you being newer to the space of Black Man Lab, what were your thoughts on what you saw on Monday? The whole thing. What did you think?
So, this is not my first Black Men's Lab. That Monday wasn't my first one. I've been to a couple, and it was the first time I was ever on a panel, so that was a unique experience, and I really enjoyed it. And I really was appreciative of people walking up to me, and somebody even like I think when I first started coming to Black Men's Lab, I don't think I had my locks. It's been like a couple years. So somebody was like, it just kind of caught me back. I was like, oh yeah, I do have locks now. It's been that long, and it's just, Black Men's Lab, I tell people all the time that it's such a unique environment and experience. I know you're asking me about Monday, but I really want to tell you about this cool experience I had a couple weeks ago when I brought my brother.
Please.
We're from the Bronx, and this doesn't exist in New York. If you're in a group of other brothers, you consider them ops unless you know them. And I could just see it on his face. I felt like, oh, wait a minute, we could be in a space where we feel safe and protected, and it was just an amazing experience from when I first experienced it, and to watch him experience what I had previously experienced, just being in a safe environment amongst other Black men, which is not a given for where we're from.
Yeah, and hey, I'm from Chicago, so I feel you on that 100%. And it's interesting that you say that. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today that was, I was explaining what Black Man Lab is, and this was somebody that's potentially a funder for us, and I said, it's damn near impossible to really put it into words without being in the space. Like, I can tell you about it, but when you come in the room, there's something it's organic. There's something that's almost spiritual about it in terms of that feeling, right? And then as you were talking, I remember your brother now. I remember that whole thing with you all from the Bronx, and that's something that's like you pick it up right away. You're like, oh, okay. I remember when we had one panelist, Brother Bill Duke, the actor, producer, director. He was a panelist for us before. And while he was on the panel, he pulled me to the side and he whispered in my ear, he said, oh, I get it now. What you were trying to explain, he said, I get it. He's like, and then he ran with it from there. Initially, like you said, his probably reaction was like, the ops thing, where he was kind of very reserved. And then once he got it, he just let it all go and shared all he could. So yeah, I get it, and I love that you recognize that, and I hope that is something that is contagious in terms of other brothers bringing more folks in, just like you bring your brother. Was awesome. So what about you, Mark? You sat in as a panelist, and not your first time doing it, but we're new to back being in the space from this lovely pandemic we've been having. So what were your thoughts?
Well, actually, my first time actually being introduced to the lab was a technology panel, and I was on the panel. And then just based on that experience of being there, meeting all of the people and the way it was, that made me want to come back. So I don't know if I was back immediately the next week, but after that, I was pretty much there every week. And the difference now, through the pandemic, obviously we went virtual, right? And then once we were able to get back into the space, there's still that point of a mixture of ages, right? Of being in there, and you always take that picture, the youngest person and the oldest person.
Yeah.
So that part, as well as continually meeting new people, right? And the panel is about, in this case, it was about technology, but the idea is that people show up every Monday and meet and get to know those individuals. So the most powerful part wasn't the panel itself, which there were great questions, but it was the conversations that we had after it was over, where all of those different people got to come up and talk to us individually and just kind of expound on their story. Because, we got 2 minutes and then we got to pass the mic. Yeah. But, there was a lot of questions and being able to talk to them individually and cater the information specifically to them. That was what was powerful.
Yeah, I think that that post session time that we have where we're all getting together, and I think that's the way that people let the guards down during that and just open up and, like you said, ask questions to people that they probably wouldn't normally do. We typically as Black men stay in a kind of guarded space, but I think that the environment that the Black Men Lab is that it sets up for everybody to be open, ask questions, and then not just ask questions, but then follow up, and people are staying in touch and people are still looking for guidance and information in different areas. It happens every week. So appreciate you sharing that. And that's what it's supposed to be all about. And hopefully, as we continue to move this forward, we'll be growing this space, not just here in Atlanta, but elsewhere as well, because clearly it's needed, right, for us. So question, what do you all think about the questions that were asked while you were on the panel? Was there anything that jumped out at you that you thought was kind of profound as a question as it came to you?
I'd say that I really enjoyed the questions. I really love that they were very tactical questions. Like people, sometimes people get nervous and they're just kind of fumbling through whatever they're thinking about. But people were on it. Like, hey, I have a podcast. How do I promote my brand? Or one gentleman I spoke to afterwards, he was talking about his brother, and his brother was just learning how to code, and he was asking for just even to have that mindset, like if I can bring something home to my brother, it would help him. So he was asking his brother, like asking us about how to get his brother started, or what can he do to help his brother. And I spoke to him afterwards, and I thought that he was so genuine about it, because I didn't, when he first asked the question, I didn't know if it was his son, but it turns out it was his brother. And that just meant a lot, like, because he's like, hey, I'm here. I have access to information. I'm going to try to help my brother further his thing. He could have asked it by himself.
Sure.
But, he was focused on his brother, and I had given him what I thought was some really good advice that I wish a lot of young people getting into technology. Mark started to kind of go down this path is, and I'll say something, I'll kind of say what Mark said, but then I'll say something slightly different, is Mark basically said to pair his interest with a thing, because we're, writers write, coders code. So if you want to be a developer or a programmer, you should be doing the action. And what is helpful is if you can pair that with something you're into. Yeah, I think that was Mark's point. And I would say is just adding on to that, what I told him is like, your brother is, your brother, his likes, his dislikes, just because he's into technology, he's not all of a sudden a different person. Take the things you know about him and use those to motivate him on his journey.
I like that, because that leads to one of the things that we talk about quite often, which is purpose, right? And I think that that's also key in any successes that we see as it relates to being an entrepreneur, or just whatever you're doing from a work standpoint, is when it's driven by your purpose, it becomes less work,
yes,
and more of you doing the work because it's what fulfills you, and then everything else comes. We talked about the piece around reciprocity as well, right? As you do the work the right way, the right things happen to come back to you. So What about you, Mark? Was there anything that jumped out at you?
So one, I got a couple questions along this line, and then I had a good conversation with someone who was about my age or a little younger and was interested, like, I want to get into technology. Like, I hear that a lot. I want to get into technology, right? And so I kind of drill down into what does that mean? Um, and where do you see yourself in that? So this person had like a medical background, a psychology background, and we were talking about it. So first thing I did is I wanted to expand his knowledge or his concept of what tech meant, right? So there's the person who actually builds the apps or the website or the other components. And then there are all these other jobs that are around it, tech as an industry, right? And for example, if he has a medical background, there are all these applications based around entering information into an iPad or something like that. And there are people who are building all of those apps, right? So part of what they need is they need people with domain knowledge. So when you're building that app for somebody who is going to be doing a service, you need access to someone who can explain to you what that should look like. Right. And also you need someone who understands a bit of the tech so that you can bridge the gap, right? So you don't have to code it, as well as you don't have to be the person who's giving out the services, but there still needs to be that middle person who can explain this information to the technology person so that they know what to build and can be a conduit between the two. Mm-hmm. So automatically that still puts you in the technology field. That can be considered a business analyst. There's tons of titles for those type of things, but that immediately expands it, because a lot of what drives people away, like when we're talking about that younger person and they're 17 years old and they are trying to be a technologist and they are trying to be a coder, a programmer, a developer, whatever that title looks like, that's really where they're dialed in. A lot of people are trying to get into the industry, the money that's being made, the fact that there are lucrative careers around it, but their mission or their intent is not really to become a coder, right? Mm-hmm. And you just have to identify that, and they might lead themselves into that, but that alone may not be what their space is, and they don't know that all these other things exist. So that's another thing there of just like opening people's eyes to all of the other things that don't necessarily involve you having to code, but are very vital to how those applications are made.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had years ago, a company that I worked for, it was out of Boston, and I have very, very little technology background. But what they wanted me to do was go to a Salesforce conference in San Francisco to tell them how they wanted their Salesforce system set up, their CRM set up, that was going to work best for our sales organization. And because there were some very unique things that we did that it couldn't just be explained over the phone or whatever. And so I spent like 3 days with, those people that you're talking about, the coders, the programs, whatever they're called, of me just trying to map out what this needed to look like and be unique for them. And it was just funny because by the time I got done with it, they were like, oh man, you should be an analyst. You should be able to, they were trying to pull me into that kind of work. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm just telling you what I think we need, So what you're saying there is you need somebody that knows, in that world that you're talking about, like in healthcare, you need somebody that knows what it should look like to be able to tell somebody else, how, that information so they can build it. So that makes perfect sense. So let me ask you all this. Where did you, before you got into doing what you're doing today, what got you there? Like, did you start out, let's say, in high school or college, after college, did you know that this was the space that you wanted to be in? Or did, kind of like some of the people that were there on Monday, was it something that you made a determining factor of later in life and said, that's what I want to move into? So I'll start with you, Shawn. What about you?
So my dad, he would talk, kind of just very surface level, like technology is the future. Like he would just throw this in my head, and it was hilarious because he was a drug dealer, and like wherever we would go, like no matter what I saw, he would be sure to kind of like put this other path in my mind. Like no matter what we saw, he'd be like, listen, boy, technology is the future, technology is the future. And you hear something so many times before it starts rattling around in your head. And then while that was rattling around in my head, I actually thought I was going to go into the medical field. And on my journey there, I had like kind of a left turn in Albuquerque and ended up doing some price programming, some very like surface level technology stuff. And I said, oh, okay, well, maybe this is something. And one day I just picked up the phone and I called DeVry. I was like, hey, how do I find out about going to class and stuff? And that was a whole, journey in itself, like to be able to go from this position to that position. But, I just stuck with it because it was definitely difficult. Like I have a lot of empathy for people who want to learn technology because I think there's an assumption that things will lay themselves out for you, and that in this career, nothing can be further from the truth. Like nothing is just going to lay itself out for you. Like you really have to have the desire to want to do it. I tell people all the time, I've been fortunate enough to teach hundreds, maybe thousands of people how to code. And the one thing I tell because I know Mark has some choice words for boot camps, and I kind of share some of them. I think a lot of places right now are selling, particularly our people, that this is easy. Like what I like to rephrase that is, it's possible. Anyone can do it properly motivated. So, I went to school. I got my degree. And, even then, it was hard. I had a help desk job before I transitioned to a software developer role. And even then, that was involved me just being dedicated to the concept that that's what I wanted to do. Like literally, I would walk around the office, anyone who would listen, hey, I'm a developer. Hey, I'm a developer. I knew Salesforce. I knew Lotus Notes before Salesforce. Any opportunity I got to kind of wedge myself into a conversation about being a developer, I did. And then one day somebody called me on it, and I just kept running with it.
Nice. So you had an idea about the space of technology, and you forced your education into it because there was some interest there. But then, most importantly, you gave some purpose to it, and you kept pushing it with saying I am. So you were affirming yourself into the space. That's interesting. What about you, Mark?
Well, actually, so I started out, and I think I tell this story, like I had like my first computer, like when I was 10, I had like a TI-99, right? And it was this big keyboard looking machine, and you could buy cartridges for it. But behind the scenes, it did BASIC, QBasic, which was a programming language. And I wanted to play computer games. And, the stuff it came with was like, how to count, how to do stuff like that. But if you want to do something more interesting, you could order like this magazine, and the magazine had the programs in it. So you had to write the programs and then you could play them. So I started off doing that. That was cool. And then I think later, like one of my cousins had a Tandy. My dad worked for AT&T, Lucent Technologies at the time. So he would bring his computer home. And so I was around it a lot. And to me, it was like a toy, right? And by the time I got to high school, I did take a programming class. I took Pascal, but I really didn't think much of it because we couldn't really do anything that I thought was cool with it. So I went to Georgia Tech for engineering, and I was really into that. And I started off as an aerospace engineer, moved over to mechanical engineering. We have programming classes all through it. So, that was still something that I did, but that wasn't going to be my ultimate goal. I had like an early web page. all that type of stuff. But again, it was just something fun. Then we get released into the wild. I get a job. I was a project engineer at a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company. And to be honest, I was bored out of my mind because I had just left Georgia Tech, where we had all these really cool computers where you were supposed to play with stuff. And then I was doing CAD and other stuff, and the pace was like not as interesting. And I ended up leaving that job. And while I was looking, I got a job doing Y2K testing, so as a QA tester. And that was like, you know, this was also the time when like I had friends who were in consulting who they were engineers, but they got picked up by like, you know, Deloitte or somebody else like that. They turned them into programmers. And, you know, the internet, you know, people don't like, there was a time like the internet is cool. And I was like, why am I doing this when I could be over here? So I ended up doing a couple more jobs in contracting. And then I went back to Georgia State for my degree in computer information systems. And after that, I've been into the computer field or some level of development or managing developers ever since.
That's awesome. It's funny how, you know, you might start one place and I asked that question just for that purpose. This is 9 times out of 10, we start one place where we think we're going to be, and you know, life moves you where you're supposed to be if you let it anyway.
Right.
So that's interesting, man. I want to go a little further back, even though we had usually here on Lab Results, I try to make sure that we talk about from whence we came, right? And that I don't just mean your education or stuff like that, but so Shawn, you grew up in Bronx, what's it?
Yes, South Bronx.
South Bronx. So tell about that. You grew up in Bronx, and what was that like? Family and everything. Your brothers, sisters?
Yeah, so it was really good. So I'm a foster child, so I have kind of 2 sets of families. So I grew up. It's funny because I grew up on like what I call the Bronx, Burnside Avenue, University, Jerome, and then I went to foster care, and I grew up in Co-op City. It's quite different of environment, especially at the time, right? So I think I had the full Bronx experience, and of course, being from New York, you know, like I've had the full New York experience. But it, you know, like if you're from the Bronx, you know what I'm trying to say. There's always challenges. There's always things to traverse. I just count myself very, very fortunate that like I say this all the time. My dad gave me this fire, this hustle mentality, like very, very early on. Like nothing, you know. There's always levels, right? You know, you think like you're in the bottom. You think you're in the projects, but even in the projects, there's people who have more than you, and you're like always like being judged and kind of looked at funny. But my dad gave me this. Like whenever I wanted something, nothing was ever like just given. Like if I said I wanted a computer, like when I asked for a Commodore 64. You know, even when I was in high school, he was like, okay, how much did it cost? And, you know, first of all, $250 for a Commodore 64 was $1 million. You know, I actually did not end up getting my first computer till I was my first day of school, college, which is for somebody like me, that's very unusual, like to be, you know, as far as in my career. But just anything I asked for, it was always like, how much do you have? You know, you have to work to put in things. And that kind of helped me a great deal because it made me hustle. And that hustle mentality saved me so many times.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. It's interesting that your father, with his background, had the foresight to try to keep you moving in the direction of what was going to be, you know, informative for you down the road, and it's clearly panned out for you with that. So that's amazing. Mark, what about you?
So I'm an Atlanta native, and a good portion of my family is either here in Atlanta or in Powder Springs, right outside of Atlanta. In terms of like how it helped, my dad's a tinkerer, right? So you know, like a lot of this stuff, like I said, that brought home, it really wasn't for me. It was there for my, you know, I could use it, but like, you know, he was into it too. That's why we had it. And then as a part of that tinkering situation, like we would have like old toasters, old so-and-so, you know, like an old fan downstairs. And I was notorious for taking stuff apart. Things might not find themselves back together, but but I would take things apart, or it would be kind of like he might show me how to, like, you know, like on the cable television, like how you program this or how you do that type, how you do those type of things. So it was like my interest kind of married with his, or it you know, it was encouraged or not discouraged. If I, well, one household, it wasn't. Like if I took something apart at my house, that was fine. But if I went over to my grandparents' house and took something apart, it's a whole different story. But to Shawn's point, what that laid for me is in tech, like you got to figure it out. Like there'll be a book, there'll be a program, there'll be whatever, but most of it's like you doing it and doing it over and over and over again. And what I find that most people are confronted with is the fact that they're going to fail, and then therefore they're going to stop. And if you're just messing with it and messing with it again, and that's kind of your thought process, like, does that work? Nope. Does that work? Nope. Does that work? And you just keep going, you will figure out how things are. But if you actually believe that you're going to start it and end it and it is going to work perfectly, that is very that puts you on the wrong course, because you look at all of those as though you're messing up, as opposed that you're learning. You're learning what to do and what not to do. And again, that's what you need, because this entire profession is constantly reinventing itself. So the idea that you're just going to, you know, play with it, just mess to see what will happen, explore things of your own accord, and, you know, when something breaks, it creates a lack of anxiety because you've broken stuff before that wasn't yours and you had to figure out how to fix it. So when you do that for a client or at the job, it's not as stressful.
Yeah, it's funny, man. You say as a kid that you were taking stuff apart and putting it back together all the time. I wasn't that kid. My big brother was that kid. And guess whose stuff he took apart all the time?
Not yes.
I had a head-to-head football game. You all remember those? The
Tycho?
Yeah. He took my head-to-head apart, talking about he's going to fix it. Never worked again. It was never broke in the first place.
Right.
So, yeah, man, I understand that. But that's great feedback, y'all. Shawn, talk about your work with Stacey Abrams' organization, what you did, because I think that's, you brought that up on Monday, you know, kind of in passing, but that's some huge stuff that you all did.
Absolutely. I just want to make one clarification.
Sure.
The organization is currently held by Nsei Ufot, and she's the director. She's the person who hired me. Stacey was already on her governor's bid, so I think a lot of people, they know she started it, but really Nsei Ufot is the person who runs it, who was running it when we were doing the work, the very important work that we're doing. You know, listen, I've been working with NGP since 2018. You know, it's been, and they're a very dynamic and phenomenal organization, and I've enjoyed all the different things. You know, I came in as a consultant, I built the mobile app, and then I ended up working on some election protection software. And, you know, coming in from not being a political person, and most times learning so much from my time with the organization and learning how important the work is. Like, there are people who are literally trying to steal your vote, trying to take away your right to vote on an active basis. And, you know, I'm transitioning from being the CTO currently, but I still am involved in a lot of the high level technology decisions. And we've had our site tagged. We've had people actively attacking, you know, democracy. So it's just been a very interesting journey with them. And there's a lot of challenges when you do that type of work, you know, death threats, you gotta have security, like you always got to be playing defense. You know, you just have to always be on it. And from a, you know, breaking it, that's kind of the political stuff, but the technology, like, you know, I've been very fortunate to be able to build some awesome technology. Like, we were mentioned in a couple of like New York Times and CNET talked about some of the technology that we built for them. So it's been great.
Yeah, it's amazing that in today's day and age, the level of, I guess for lack of a better word, evil that can exist out there to try to undo what is just work, right? Like, so what the New Georgia Project is all about, it's really just, when you think about it, it's really just making a vote count, right? That's it.
Really, it's about standing up for people.
Yeah, exactly. So if that's the case, then, and there's nothing else behind it other than that, why would anybody want to, cyber attack or whatever else, with an organization of that nature? So it just tells you that there is the work that's out there to be done.
I would like to say, and I've heard someone say this, and now I'd say it. If your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't be trying to steal it from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I just think it's amazing that, again, on Monday, when that was brought up, after all the other stuff that we talked about, it was like, whoa, that's some important stuff that you're a part of and probably instrumental in terms of, providing that kind of safe space for that to occur, right? And trying to make sure that we're doing the right work, man. So again, I commend you, and I know the Black Man Lab is very appreciative of that work. What, Mark, were you going to? I thought you were going to say something. Were you saying anything there?
No, I was just the cyber attacks, the amount of stuff that I'm quite sure that you got to see, that probably based on the vitriol we saw on the news, the people paid and unpaid who probably tried to mess with the process is probably, yeah.
Yeah. And were you seeing that like on a daily basis?
So I would say that every time there was a local or a state level election, you start seeing things. Our site got taken down a couple of times. We had to get it back up. I mean, and you just become aware that these things are not happening in a vacuum.
So when you say it got taken down, that's somebody actively.
Yeah, I mean, they use all type of techniques to overwhelm your site. For obvious reasons, I can't talk about the tech that we use, but there were many days I was up to a full day, keeping our presence of the thing is, like, the website is just a website, but it's not just a website. It's where people go to find out more information, and when, in this last election, when we were getting thousands and thousands and thousands of people inquiring about us and trying to donate, we raised a lot of money, and, people don't like that. So, they do like technology hacks. They try to hit the site. They do social engineering. They try to spread misinformation. You don't think that a social hack is technology based, but it is. Like when someone goes on Twitter and tries to spread disinformation or just share the wrong information, that becomes something that we have to deal with. So you have to have the technology to kind of be aware of all these different things and how it affects you. I've personally seen it. Like, we raise money, then we use that money to help people have access to the things that they need to vote. You wouldn't think that anyone would need anything to vote, but when you start talking about 2-hour, 3-hour, 6-hour lines for people to vote, we're not able to do stuff as now, but we had to bring water. We had elderly people. We had to rent buses to bring people to vote. Like like I said, it's, the devil is busy.
Very busy. Very, very busy. And still is. Yes. Still working hard to suppress something that should be just everybody's given right. And there's obvious reasons behind that. But man, again, thank you for that work, man. So Another question for you guys as it relates to becoming, back to our topic at hand, entrepreneurship in technology. Talk about the spaces that you've seen be very successful as it relates to becoming an entrepreneur in that space. What do you think are some of those spaces where people get their foot in the door, having interest in technology?
So for me, I would say that the thing about entrepreneurship in tech is the same as about entrepreneurship in anything. And one of the foundations that I see that is kind of lacking in the technology space as a whole is it's about relationships and community. So the thing that has been most valuable for me is going to meetups and conferences and things like that and getting and making those relationships with people. And again, having been in corporate America, I know that's how that works, right? I know that people get jobs, they get contracts, they get everything by knowing the people who are giving out those jobs and contracts, about even knowing that those jobs and contracts are available. And one of the things that I've seen a lot is people thinking that it's strictly a merit-based system, right? And so they're going to come in and they're going to be the best programmer and that's going to be enough, when it is relationship-based. And so as well as Shawn talked about, it's an ongoing process, right? And you have to fill your circle. And so if you don't have a circle of friends who can talk the same talk as you and who can uplift you when you have been beating your head against the same problem, and like if you have parents and family or other people who like literally don't understand what it is you're doing, and then you have, or the friends you go play ball with or whatever, and they don't quite understand that, and then you have a conversation with somebody who's gone through the same thing, and it's just like, yeah, dude, like it's gonna take a while. Like, you're almost, that again, people have an impression of it that it's not, and creating that community, going to those places where you see things up close and personal, finding out like what's coming down the line, and chatting. Like one of the things, like I actually was a judge for a competition at the New Georgia Project via Shawn. He needed some judges. He reached out to me and some other folks, and we came in and we judged the project, and got to meet people. And the fact that that's happening, because people always say, well, Black people aren't doing technology. It's that our message about what's going on isn't really getting out there. And to be able to see it, they got to play a computer game, to make a computer game. So that was based around getting people to vote. So it checked off a whole bunch of boxes all at once. It was technology, it was community activism, it was interesting. Like, so I would say for me, those spaces are spaces that provide community. And then that way, because everybody goes through this journey, if after college or after whatever is your formal or your informal learning, you need to be in a space with people who understand what you're going through.
Yeah, I think that I'll jump in and let you go real quick, Shawn. I think that that's a big key for what Black Man Lab is, right? It's about building that kind of infrastructure of community so that brothers like you guys who may have some commonality in the work that you're doing, have a space to say, oh, I see you. Okay. We can do some stuff together. I think probably purposely, that fissure has been there in our community for a long time in terms of, you guys in this space that you're in technology, or somebody in healthcare, or wherever, all the different spaces. Just so often we don't have the opportunity to glue together, to build community, to build each other, to say, oh, we can do this just as good as, or if not better than those other people, right? So that's very good advice there. Appreciate that. Shawn, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh no, you're good. I just wanted to kind of also jump in there. Like one, you know, at every stage in your journey, you need to be surrounded by people who are also going in the same direction. You know, when I was an instructor for General Assembly, you know, I also had an opportunity to kind of help recruit the next class, and I would tell them about gravity. You know, like when you're trying to do something that you've never done before, it's going to feel like everything is going against you. If you have a place, you might lose your place. If you got a girl, you might lose your car. Your car's gonna die. I just call it gravity. Like you need to be prepared that there are things in this world that don't want you to grow, and your job is to to grow at all costs, and you just need to be prepared for the way things work. And if you didn't have to struggle to transition, then nothing would ever grow. You know. And additionally, I wanted to say that what I love about Black Men's Lab and what I love about, community, like working with Mark, like we can tell all these different stories about how we work together, how we refer people, like one time, like it's great. But there's this silent thing that we don't always recognize is that, and I saw it at this on Monday, some people don't believe that it can be done. Mark talked about the video game hackathon. The winners were two Black women.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Two Black women who never developed a video game in their life won thousands of dollars prizes, and they won top prize developing a game. I'm really big on video games because that's a big medium, right? Especially here in Atlanta, like we need to be able to see that exists. We need AAA game companies that are run and controlled by Black people. They always will give us an opportunity. They'll be like, oh yeah, you guys play games, esports. Like, you play Madden? Yeah, we'll make some money off you. Very few times where you'll have a conversation with them. Hey, let me help you build a shooter. Let me help you build a sports game. Let me teach you. And listen, I'm gonna be straight up. Video game development is tough. It's not for everybody, but we won't know who it's for if we don't have the opportunity to expose the next generation, and not only expose them, but to just keep showing people that you do exist in these spaces and you can do this.
And it's interesting because there's so many spaces within that video game space, right? So you got the people that are developers, you got what you all know all the different spaces.
Development, art, sound.
Yes.
Like people who draw, people who write the things that characters say.
Yeah.
Video games is actually so amazing.
Motion capture. They got all
motion capture. Exactly. There's so many different aspects to storytelling. And video games is an example of storytelling.
Exactly. And I think what you said a little bit ago is what's probably key is the belief that we can do it. You know what I mean? Like and I think that's my hope is anyway, is that what spaces like Black Men Lab provides is that visual, right? When you look at our panel of experts or even just the room of having, a lot of successful Black men in the room that have done different things. It gives that visual of, oh, this is possible, because I think that our young folks, and I was going to ask this question, you all, I think that our young folks are challenged with seeing what's possible, right? Because they're so inundated with technology. So the technology that they're utilizing is, the social media on a daily basis, which tells us, you got to be a superstar or a rapper or whatever, sports figure, whatever. And it doesn't really delve into like this stuff that we're talking about. What do you think is the means of trying to counteract that? What would your thoughts be, Mark?
So you you see what you focus on, right? So the world is all happening at once, and you can only take in what you put your focus on and what you look at. So from the aspect of social media having the attention of this generation, like we need to be a part of that social media to show people doing these things. And the difference between the people who aren't doing it and the people who are doing it and trying to get is you have to show the struggle as well as the success, right? So there's this curated view of things, and what that can do across several distant systems is you can look at that and say, well, that's not me. I'm having trouble. I'm going through issues. And the example that's presented is too pristine. I mean, the same thing happened in movies and television when I was growing up, when I was watching the people who they put forth. And I thought a technology person was a specific type of, like, there's a very well-defined image of what that is. And, or if you're Black, there's a very defined image of what that person looks like and what they do. And if you don't match that, you don't really see that. But if you see yourself or some example of something that you've been through, like varied backgrounds, people who are self-taught, who went to college, who changed careers, who did all of these things, who are doing well or who are progressing through their stuff, that makes it more accessible, right? Like the same platforms being used for other purposes can be used for our purposes. We just have to create that content and make it available, and then make it interesting. That's other. It has to be interesting. These are kids. It's got to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that what you're saying there is, it speaks to the challenge in general. It's not just the technology things in general, is that, you know, in social media, you're seeing the end result 9 times out of 10. You know what I mean? So even if we showed you guys who are, you know, very successful at what you're doing, what they're seeing is the end result. They don't see that process of what it takes. And you touched on this before, Shawn. They don't see that process of the work, you know. And I think that's one of the things that we're tasked with, is being able to show that, but then also give a roadmap, right? What were your? I cut you off, Shawn. What were your thoughts on?
Oh, you said it. I mean, I was going to say the end result. Like what people respond to is the end result. Like and even taking it to what Mark was saying, like, you know, you can find Black developers in every level of their journey on social media, on YouTube. And what I used to tell my students is, like, use these things as white noise, you know, podcasts, you know, YouTube channels, all these things. You know, the more you add to to the background, you know, it adds the inertia to push you forward, you know. But I think it's a very good point we're talking about is, like, someone's journey is their journey. Like, we could exist in the same universe of tech and have very, very different journeys, right? You could be extremely successful and never code a line of code a day in your life. A very good friend of mine taught me a lesson. I was midway through my career as a software engineer, and we were having a very candid conversation about how much he earned. And he earned double. I was making $150,000 a year at the time, and he earned double. And I didn't understand. He wasn't better than me. So, but this is a really important lesson that he taught me. He was like, you don't get paid to code. You get paid to provide solutions. And when you understand, the moment I understood that, it changed the trajectory of my career, because I can only code for so many hours a day, but when I understand what the client's really asking for, I can value base my offerings to what the clients really need. Completely changed everything. All he did was say like a sentence. But if we weren't in community and he wasn't able to share that with me, I would never have gotten like the cheat code.
Yeah, and that's a key. What you said there, though, is a key to any successful entrepreneurship endeavor, right? Is that understanding where you can possibly provide a solution and then being able to handle that at home. So That's one of those things that's across the board that can change the trajectory of your success. You can just do the work and be successful, but being that person that is a solutions provider takes you to another level, man. So
I like to say that we exist in the the value economy. Mm-hmm. Like, if you can prove that you can add value to someone, they'll pay you to do it.
Absolutely.
And you should be, and a lot of these newer entrepreneurs need to learn how to add value to people. So many people, like, when you meet new people, how do I get paid? Because they're coming from all these different backgrounds. And yeah, you know what? You can learn to do something today and someone will pay you. But if you learn how to add value, people, like, I can just, and I like to speak from my own experience, because that way I feel the most comfortable. You know, we don't do any outbound sales. Most people know me. If they track back, oh, you know what? I met him at this hackathon. Oh, you know what? I asked him a question. He helped me. And when people think of me or what Mobile App Hero does, it's because I was there at some point and I added some value. So when people need something, you know, you should talk to Shawn. You should talk to Mobile App Hero. And that is the only reason I have a business today. And I think that, you know, we exist in this value-based economy, and a lot of young people kind of glaze over it. It's not like it's not like missing. It's that they don't understand that you have to add value before you can get paid.
Yeah, I do sales training, right? So one of the things that I always talk about is adding value and serving as a resource, right? Because that resource piece is that's that continuous business, right? Because people know that they can. There's people, I'm sure both of you guys work. There's people that you've worked with many, many moons ago that maybe you may not have anything that you're doing business with them today, but they feel comfortable to call you up, pick up the phone, or shoot you an email and say, hey, I have this situation. What should I do? That's serving as a resource, right? And when you do that, that adds to your brand, which adds to your business, so on and so forth. So, man, I told you this goes quick. I told you this goes quick. We're already at 7:26, man. We end sharply at 7:30. So one of the things that we do every week is we talk about what are your habits, rituals, and disciplines, the things that you do on a daily basis that keep you moving forward, that keep you, focused on the work that you do and focused on just your life in general, things that keep your head up above water in these turbulent waters that we as Black men quite often are in. So I'm going to ask you guys, I'll start with you, Mark, habits, rituals, and disciplines.
So I meditate. I practice martial arts. I actually teach a class on the weekends. And part of that, we use that same concept of like, you are what you practice. And so instead of trying to practice for hours and hours at a time, you do 10 minutes a day of this, 30 minutes a day of that, and it just adds up. So I do what's called standing meditation. It's like you hold a posture and you stand, you get your breath together. It helps get your mind right, but it also works on being able to do certain moves and things like that. I also read some affirmation. So I have a book of affirmations that I go through, and I read something from that. And then I also have started this thing where I'm reading a book, obviously, about something that I'm doing, and I'm journaling, right? So it started off like, about just me and, just putting my thoughts on paper, but also like whatever my ideas are for apps, for whatever, like I write all of that down. Like I might not have the space or the time or whatever to attack that right now, but I just keep writing those things down so that I have them to fall back on. And I also see that I keep talking about this thing, right? So I need to invest in this because I've got pages and pages on this idea. And so trying to develop that into something. So that's how I keep myself on track.
That last one you said is a great one. Well, all of them are great ones, but that last one is one that I've started to take on because what I found is that especially if you're kind of a creative thinker, you come up with these things in your mind, and you're like, oh, I'm going to work on that, and then maybe it's just me being in that certain age. Stuff fades away and I forget, right? And then sometimes you're like, what was that I had? I had an idea about something. So what I've started to do is do just what you said. I write those things down, even if it's just a quick scribble on a thought, write it down so it has some place to at least come back to, and either continue the thought, add to the thought, or whatever, and hopefully move that to being a working action eventually. That's a great one. I suggest folks do that too. Shawn, how about you?
So definitely meditation, but I also, again, just a slight different spin on, to me, writing it down makes things real. But I find that voice memoing my thoughts is good too, especially I can get out way more, we're always on our phones, or, like if I'm not at a keyboard, I can't type as fast as I can think. So you can get your ideas out hot right into the voice memo. And, on my iPhone, it translates to text immediately. So it's been like a game changer to be, I'll go for a walk and I'll literally talk myself to the challenges that my business is facing, or the things I want to do. Then I'll run it through a text to speech, grab what I can grab, make lists. I think that's a really powerful tool. Podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts. Again, I try to fill up the white noise with whatever I'm into. Like, I have a couple of different interests. I have a fashion business. So I'm always trying to fill the void, like the background noise, with things that, like, because you're learning even though you're not actively listening.
True.
Yeah.
I'm stolen, by the way. I'm gonna start. That's my new thing. I need to take my notes from me doing this, typing them out, to just talking it in. I'm stealing that one from you. Appreciate that. Brothers, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for Monday. Of course, thank you for tonight, for sharing what got you here, what your results have been so far, and look forward to watching you all move forward and doing great things. I know that there's some more on the horizon for both of you. Of course, Mark, I know you're always going to be involved with Black Man Lab, and Shawn, you're one of our brothers now as well. So we'd love to have you in the space and bringing people in. We end every week the same way we do when we meet live. So I'm going to ask y'all to act like we're locking arms right now, if you could, and then just repeat after me. I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't break here.
I'm a link in this chain.
I'm a link in this chain.
And it won't break here.
And it won't
break here.
We are links in this chain.
We are links in this chain.
And we won't break here.
And we won't break here.
Ashe. Thank you again, brothers. Love y'all, man, and look forward to next Monday. Shawn, hope you can be in the space. If not, your spirit will be there, brother. But bring more folks and tell more folks about the Black Men Lab. Thank y'all, man. Appreciate you.
All right.
All right.
Every time we speak, I feel this melody telling me my black dreams are sacred. My black